Hello, welcome to 30 Minutes. I'm Rick Anthony. We hear a lot of chatter these days about the millennials, the people born roughly between 1980 and 1999. They're unemployed, underemployed, living at home with their parents, burdened with debt from their college years, and uncertain about the prospects for the future. That's the cloud hanging over about 80 million of our young people in this country. In fact, according to a recent report, the percentage of millennials, young people in this country, who are interested in owning or investing in new businesses has dropped precipitously. They are risk averse, or seem to be, for reasons we still don't understand. Happily, my guest today is an exception to that. Derek Fiorenza has been here before with his story about Food for Friends, a program he started in 2007 to feed the homeless in Philadelphia. That's his avocation. His vocation is as COO and Vice President of Summit Group Retirement Partners, Inc., a consulting firm that works with employers in designing, administering, communicating retirement plans for employees. Derek is a very busy young man, doing a lot of really good things and helping a lot of people. Derek, good to see you again.
Thanks, Rick.
Always good to see you. You've been here now 3 or 4 times. Even your appearance is evolving. I remember the first time there was the ponytail.
Long hair.
Long hair, yes, indeed. Talking about football as well as all the other things.
Absolutely.
You're here, however, to introduce a new member of Food for Friends.
Yes.
The chairman of your board, Dr.
Angelo Armenti.
Angelo Armenti.
Yes.
Armenti?
Armenti,
Armenti.
yes.
I love that.
So they say it in Italy.
That's, yeah. And here in Wayne. You started this as a concept. You started it because you saw a need, and with your father and your friends and family, you started taking food down to, and as so often happens with what we'll call a social venture, social entrepreneurial venture, there was a concept, it became an idea, you began to actualize it, and now it is a movement. And because it's a movement and bigger and more complex, you need people like Dr. Armenti to bring their wisdom, their experience, and so on, to grow an organization. So why don't we begin with, I know who you are, we'll get back to that, but Doctor, what's your background? What attracted you to Derek and what he's doing? What role are you going to play as chairman of the board?
My role that Derek has asked me to carry out, and I've agreed to do, is to serve as the chairman of his board, basically to take an idea that Derek has developed very, very successfully, and he's grown tremendously, all on his own with his friends in the last few years, and he wants to take it to the next level. Basically, I think Derek needs someone who can perhaps help raise funds to accomplish the ambitious mission.
Yes.
And he's aware of the fact that during my time as university president, we were able to raise $55 million in private money over 20 years. From a state school, which doesn't normally attract philanthropists, as you can imagine. So Derek would like me to help in that regard, and also to help with my experience with nonprofit boards, which I've had some experience.
You're CEO, President Emeritus of California.
California University of Pennsylvania, one of the sister institutions to Westchester.
But we are all Villanovans.
Yes.
Yes, all
How about
Villanova
that?
grads.
Yeah.
And Derek, I guess, was a student at California?
He was, and I got to know him there, not as a student, but I got to know him as a punter on our football team, and he was a very good one.
But at the time, you weren't aware of what he had hoped to do?
No, I hadn't heard about F4 at that time, although I met his dad and his granddad, also Villanova grads, and got to know Derek and to respect him very much. He's a great role model for other young people, because he was obviously fortunate to be born into the family he was born into. He's had a great education, but he understands the importance of giving back to others, and that's why I admire him.
You've spent most of your career in academia?
Entirely, 40 years.
And your specialty is physics?
My discipline is physics, and I was at Villanova as a physics professor for 20 years, and then out to California University for another 20 years, and I left there in 2012.
But in retirement, which of course has been redefined,
yes.
You're not sitting around
Oh my God, no.
rocking away.
No,
you started your own nonprofit.
I did, and the purpose of that nonprofit is to preserve the mission, the historic mission of public higher education, which has basically been lost in recent years. The public universities throughout America, to a large degree, but certainly in Pennsylvania, are basically, they're now 75% private. in terms of who pays. That what that does is that puts a great burden on these students to be able to pay for their education, being burdened with crushing student loan debt, for example. So PASCU is the Pennsylvania Association of State Colleges and Universities. PASCU is the acronym. And the purpose is to see if we can't do something about that, because a lot of very college-ready students cannot afford. They're being denied an education simply because their family can't afford it. And so we'd like to do something about that.
Yeah, wish you well.
Yeah.
Derek, go back a few years, the first
Sure.
time we met, and give us the evolution of Food for Friends. Also, I'd like to know, has there ever been a time when you thought it's too hard, too many obstacles, not enough money, too many people, I can't do it?
Two great questions, Rick. So start with the first one. 2007 was our first venture into feeding shelters and to feeding our constituents.
And that was a Christmas Eve, right?
It was a Christmas meal, and what we did is we had a caterer in Westchester. We solicited the caterer to donate 25 meals that our family took to a homeless shelter in Coatesville, and we served. And it really was an initiative to just give back. It was more of an idea, let's serve some meals around Christmas time. And then the following year, I went back to the same caterer. They're still in business, Mizuno's Catering in Westchester, and I said, would you donate 50 meals? A year after, it was 100. And it was being done every year around Christmas time.
Just in Philadelphia?
It was actually just in Coatesville, Westchester area.
Okay.
And then what happened when I was at California playing football, and I was getting my MBA, it was the fall of 2010, and I coordinated 17 counties in Pennsylvania, from Washington County all the way to Philadelphia. And what we did is we coordinated over 1,000 meals that were donated from various restaurants that we solicited. And we had volunteers come together to pick up, deliver, and serve these meals at shelters. So with that success, it was really, I was trying to balance going to school, playing football, and starting this up on the side. I wasn't really sure where it was going to go.
Right.
And it started to evolve, and in the spring/summer of 2011, we officially incorporated as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Once that was in place, we built upon we call it the annual feeding frenzy every December.
Yes.
So we built upon that and served a few thousand more meals at Christmas time. In the spring of 2012, we decided to build a board of directors. And that board has gone through several permeations. Where we're at now, it's kind of almost come full circle. We started with a very big board, then we moved to a board with committees, then we shrunk the board, and now it's big again. And we probably have close to 30 to 40 members. And it's really a working board of sorts. We come into our meetings, we have an agenda we follow, report at the macro level, everything that we need to cover, and then we break up into 4 groups, and at the micro level, address the problems, and then come back as a group and kind of recap. And the second question that you asked dealt specifically with, were there any times that I've struggled or that I felt like I couldn't continue or whatever the reason might be. And yes, there were a couple times I thought about giving up the charity completely. And my best friend, Jason Littman, he and I we've been best friends since high school. He was very instrumental in encouraging me during some of those times because I was putting a lot of effort into this. It was taking me away from my full-time job. So I wasn't able to kind of invest myself into building my own personal future. I was trying to help the world, trying to give back. So I was very emotionally drained, and sometimes I just felt defeated. And Jason helped me a lot. And then last year we had Brenda Russell, who's our director, on the program. And when Brenda came on board, I guess it was about a year and a half ago, she really kind of reignited things.
Yes.
She gave a lot of hope.
Very energetic.
Very energetic. Vanguard employee, comes in with a lot of pedigree, structure. She gave us hope, and in a lot of ways kind of reinstilled my faith in what we were doing, because not that I was losing faith, but I was getting burned out.
It's hard.
One person trying to manage all these relationships. So what happened is Dr. Armenti, when he left Cal, we have been in constant contact, and it's been about a 2-year recruiting process. I had to continue to recruit him, and he always believed in our cause. It was really a matter of time.
Yes.
But he's always been a big advocate and supporter of me, and I've always looked up to him. He's been an amazing mentor in my life, and he lives He lives the life that you can be proud of, that you look up to and say, that's a man that I want to emulate. So I have the most admiration and respect for this man. And when he agreed, it was actually this past fall, Brenda and I met with him a couple times. When he agreed to come on board, it really, I believe, solidified, one, our credibility, and two, helped us take our organization to the next level. So hopefully that closes the loop on both questions.
But the program was also expanded, right? You were Westchester, Coatesville, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. You also are down south, I think.
So the way the organization has worked over the years, it's changed. There's been some drastic shifts in the organization. Initially, what we were doing is we would solicit restaurants for food donations, and then we would then take the food to shelters and serve. Then we developed a cooking program at Villanova University, where for 2.5 years, what we did is we supplied for 6 months. Villanova adopts a shelter in Philadelphia. For 6 months, we would supply all of the meals for that shelter. Villanova is now at a point where they have enough volunteers and resources where they're not relying on our support anymore. They're actually able to fulfill it themselves, which is amazing. So the organization has changed from asking for restaurants to donate meals and cooking meals, which we still do a little bit. Those two activities are done slightly. We've moved into being a facilitator or an unpaid broker, where we connect food sources to agencies in need. So what does that mean? We take a restaurant and we say, what is your excess food that you have that you're discarding? Let's repurpose that and let's transport that to a shelter in need that can use it. So what we're doing is we're forming the relationship. 40% of the food in this country is wasted. 22% is on the consumer level. That's your supermarkets, your restaurants. So we believe that there's an opportunity there to link up the food source to the food agency. It's difficult because sometimes that requires logistical transportation. So that's something we're still working through. But it's something that is very beneficial to these shelters that are always in search of food.
So Fiorenza's Food for Friends is no longer seasonal. It's no longer just Christmas
Correct.
time or Thanksgiving or the holidays. It's year-round?
Year-round. And then the other major initiative that we run, and this is a very exciting one because this one is fully operational. We work with companies, and we ask companies to participate and become an F4 partner. And an F4 partner could be one of three ways. They make a donation, they provide us an opportunity to speak to their employees and educate them about the problem, and they participate in a non-perishable food drive. And what we do is we direct the food drive, what types of foods they should be collecting, and we link them to a local food agency or a local food pantry or cupboard. And the company will actually take the food to that pantry. What does that do? One, it empowers the company. Two, it supports the pantry. And three, it creates a natural volunteer pool for these small pantries. These companies might not be aware of these pantries. The pantries might not be aware of the companies. We've now created synergy, as Stephen Covey would say, win-win, right?
Absolutely.
So the initiatives are being a facilitator for the perishable food and a facilitator for the non-perishable food. And how do we do it? A 3-step process. Education. We always have believed in creating hunger awareness. Hunger awareness for our community, our constituents, the people that support us, and the people that we support. We want to engage our community, and we want to then provide an avenue or a pathway to eradicate the problem. So we call it the 3 E's: education, engagement, and eradication. So that summarizes everything where we've come from and where we're at now.
Now that you're a more mature not-for-profit, I think you're running into problems because, let me step back. My mail at my office these days and at my home, 99% of it is appeals of one type or another. As you know, you get on one list and you're on all the lists. And they're all worthy causes, whatever they are. But they're all competing, fiercely competing for the same dollars. You must be in exactly the same position because there are a number of other organizations who have essentially the same mission as yours. So how do you differentiate? You're not a for-profit, but you have to operate like a for-profit.
It's an excellent question. And
so how do you differentiate from the other very worthy, very deserving organizations who are trying to accomplish essentially the same mission?
It's an excellent question, and that's one of the areas, and I'll let you talk a little bit about the strategic plan when we get into it. But one of the reasons we've built a strategic plan with Dr. Armenti is to address that. I want to make it very clear to the public, we do not compete with any of the food agencies that are out there. We're here to complement and support them. So our efforts
That's
do
because
not
the problem is so big.
Yes.
There are plenty of opportunities to help and not tread on anyone else's toes.
Exactly. And I'm going to use a concept we learned in our economics class. red water where the sharks swim,
Yes.
and blue water, which is open. So we're not targeting the companies that are already donating to these pantries. We're targeting the companies that have never made a donation.
Okay.
So there isn't a competition in that sense, because the food, there is so much, as Dr. Armenti said, the problem is so vast and broad. We're complementing and supporting, not supplanting. But
there is competition.
And I'll let you talk
And
about
we,
the strategic.
in probing Derek and his board members about when you do strategic planning, it's always based on the idea of competition.
Yes.
And I kept asking, who are F4's competitors? And he kept saying, well, we don't really have any. I said, well, then that defeats the purpose of a strategic plan. And we finally figured it out at a meeting recently.
Delusional.
Well, no, there's competition, but it's not competition against other people doing what he's doing, what F4 is doing. The competition is to provide these services free of charge means some way to fund it. There's where the competition comes, and you just talked about it.
Right.
So what F4 has to do is to make the case to the foundations and the philanthropists with all those other competing, very worthy interests. I think F4 has an opportunity to be very successful for the following reason. Not everybody is concerned about the fate of, say, animals. Some people are. Not everybody is concerned about some other issues that may only affect a segment of the population. But everybody is interested in having 3 meals a day, and if they're fortunate enough to have those 3 meals a day, it's not a tough sell to say, you know, there are people who go to bed hungry in this country, as wealthy as this country is. So I think that actually F4 has the kind of mission. In fact, that's the reason why I actually agreed to help Derek, believing that I could actually help him, is that the mission is so profound and affects so many people. I think F4 can compete on that level. So the idea is to get funding so that these services can be provided free of charge to the shelters, for example.
And let's examine, let's just examine real quickly what we're trying to do. 70 billion pounds of food is thrown away in the United States every year.
70 billion?
Billion. It's enough food to fill the Rose Bowl every day. And the food banks, maybe they save a few billion of those pounds. So the opportunity is such that if we can facilitate, that is value we're providing to the market.
Right.
We don't accept federal funding. We don't accept state funding. We don't accept local funding. We've never charged, when we used to transport food, transportation costs, membership fees, agency fees, and we never and never will charge for facilitating relationships. So we build these relationships, we link up the agency to the food source, and we're not charging. So I think that also is a differentiator in why an organization would want to fund our operation.
So you rely entirely on individual or corporate donations?
Yes, sir.
Foundations.
And foundations, okay. Going forward, do you see yourself having to or becoming eligible for federal, state, or local funding?
Yeah, I'll have to have that conversation with Derek.
With Derek?
Yeah. No, we won't do that.
His concern is legitimate because when you accept
Take the money, you take the strings to go with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there are I believe that the primary source for F4 success will be foundations,
Yeah.
nonprofit foundations, who care about this. And of course, we're going to have to convince them by demonstrating success at the local and the regional level and convince them that that model can be replicated across the country. Now, Derek would like to also help eradicate world hunger, but the world is very different from the U.S. In the U.S., there's an abundance of food, a surplus of food. That's not necessarily true in other parts of the world, correct?
Yeah, the biggest difference, you're right, is production. We overproduce here, and overseas their problem is in production. They underproduce, they can't produce enough. So you're right,
That's a much tougher problem, obviously.
Yeah.
Let me give you another tough question.
Go ahead.
How do you deal with, and I'm not sure it's growing, but it certainly exists, cynicism on the part of a lot of people that the people who are in need, the homeless people, that too many of them, a large percentage, whatever that is, game the system. They take advantage of the philanthropy, the compassion that people like Derek and now you and the board feel for these people and want to help them. But we're not really helping them because we're not helping them out of the condition they find themselves in, poverty, deprivation, whatever. I think you get my point.
No.
I think there is a growing cynicism, particularly when we hear stories about the federal and state dollars that are absolutely wasted. And then every once in a while a nonprofit pops up and we hear about corruption, et cetera, et cetera. It puts a stain on the entire nonprofit community. How do you deal with that? And are you beginning to experience any of that resistance, pushback, cynicism?
I'll address it first, and then you can
Sure,
chime in
please.
your personal opinion. I look at it from a spiritual standpoint, a religious standpoint. Jesus said he was that without sin cast the first stone.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's our place to comment or judge. That's my personal opinion. Now, the problem is such that we actually have two problems. We have the immediate problem, which is people that are hungry now, may be taking advantage of the system, may not be, but people are suffering and struggling now.
Yes.
Then you have the future, and that's the children. So our approach is this: take care of those that are in need now. You can't not take care of them. They're people. They need to be taken care of. But we're trying to do more partnerships with organizations like the YMCA's that will work with children, that builds out,
For the
listen,
next
the importance of education, the importance of morality, the importance of following your dreams, of believing. That's kind of our approach to it, and I can let you jump in, weigh in
So
personally.
your mission has broadened. You're not
We're not
just
doing
feeding,
those
feeding
things.
the homeless.
We're not necessarily
but
providing
aspirationally, you hope
to support
yeah.
organizations that do that.
Okay.
We have the mission is evolving, and we have to sort of corral it and
Yes.
focus it,
Yes.
because if your mission is too broad, you don't accomplish. The cynicism that you referred to, I'm very, very familiar with, and a certain percentage of the population will not be moved by this appeal or any other appeal. What it will take for F4 to be successful is a core of people who care
Yes.
and whose own lives are sufficiently under control that they can have the luxury of being able to care about someone else. So you can't blame folks if they're already struggling. Earlier you said to Derek, did he ever feel overwhelmed or thinking that it can't be done and so on. And I was smiling during that whole thing, because you show me a nonprofit that doesn't frequently say, my God, how are we going to do this? All nonprofits struggle. I've had that with my own nonprofit, and of course my wife helps me with that. She keeps reminding me, well, you know, all this effort, where are the results, and so on. But I believe that these kinds of organizations, these nonprofits, are important, and we do them. We get discouraged sometimes, but there are enough people out there who care. I believe the thing can still be successful. The other point that you raised about some nonprofits that have been basically created a scandal by having a large percentage of the money not go to the purpose of the organization. Well, that's a disgrace. That should not be an issue. That will not be an issue with F4 as long as Derek and I are there, for the following reason. We're not, basically the services are going to be provided free of charge to the people who need it. And the foundation community, the private philanthropists, that's where the funding will come from, and we'll obviously have to account for every penny, and we will do that.
Your overhead costs are relatively small because you don't have a large paid staff.
Well, we have no paid staff at the moment, but that's not realistic, because if you want to grow this thing, you need somebody. And of course, Derek's goal, and he'll be happy to tell you about it, is to be able to have a small paid staff. And Derek turned up an article recently showing that some foundations now recognize that nonprofits do need a paid staff to be able to do what they're doing. You need volunteers, of course, and we'll have a ton of them. I believe that the F4 will never have an integrity problem. It will not, because every penny will be accounted for. And when you're dealing with foundations, even, of course, the federal government's another example. Whenever you get a penny from them, the accounting can actually can cost you money. I mean, it's expensive. But foundations are that I've seen and dealt with over the years. Obviously, you have to report. You have to show exactly where, and of course, you have to be able to show that the funds are being used for the purpose that they agreed to give it to you for.
A good bit of the money is going to come from the older generation, because that's where the money is.
That's where it is.
The volunteers, the people who sign on, are going to come from the younger people, the millennials, for the most part.
Correct.
At the top of the show, I characterized millennials as being distraught, despondent, negative, mired down in debt, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, it's a generalization, perhaps an overgeneralization, but that's what I hear, and that's what I see from the data. As an educator and as a social entrepreneur, what's your take on the millennials? Are you optimistic about them in the long run?
Absolutely.
Why?
Oh, a couple reasons. I happen to have graduated in years. Every time I got a higher education degree, the media was saying that the employment market was dismal.
Yes.
And it was not easy, but I and all of my classmates eventually found decent jobs. And
You
I
were a
think,
different generation. You were more resilient. You
well,
could improvise.
I need, in fact, the second part of my answer is going to deal with that. Quite aside from my personal experience, which is really irrelevant, there's something in the human spirit
Yes.
that the millennials, even though they've been dealt a tough hand, they will succeed for the following reason. Arthur Toynbee, who wrote A Study of History, his masterpiece, 10 volumes, he studied every civilization that ever existed on Earth. And he found certain patterns in those civilizations. And one of the ones that he found, and I'm going to make sure I get the quote right. One of his chapters is called "The Virtues of Adversity." And here's what he found: civilizations that faced the greatest challenges recorded the greatest achievements. Humans, when put upon,
Yes.
rise to the challenge.
Only if there's good, strong leadership.
It does take leadership. It does take leadership, yes. But humans have that spark
right.
within them. And I would say to the millennials, take heart. You face adversity, no doubt about
Yes.
that. But 6,000 years of human history suggests you can still win.
Yeah.
And as I said, Derek is an exception to the profile I developed because he's been
very much so.
Yeah, he's been a self-mover, self-propulsion, all of that good stuff. I just hope there are enough like him out there.
I think there are. Margaret Mead said, if you doubt that a small number, I'm paraphrasing here, if you doubt that a small number of dedicated people can change the world, it's the only thing that ever has.
Oh, I like that.
I'll give you the exact quote sometime,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
I'm doing that from memory.
I don't remember the exact number either, but the American Revolution was sparked by only a handful of people who ignited a nation.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're talking about a revolution now. Somehow we got into a revolution.
but a nonviolent one.
You're at the front of a revolution.
I don't take credit for that, but what I will say, and this is to all of the millennials, young generation, I'll paraphrase Steve Jobs. And he said, basically, knowing that I'm going to die was the greatest realization I ever had. Life is short. So I think what I would encourage everybody to do that's young and out there is to not worry about failing anymore. And
Yes.
don't be afraid to fail. Chase your dreams, develop passions, start reading books. That's one of the greatest tips I could ever give anyone is start reading books. Educate yourself and learn. And then listen to other speeches. The TED Talks are great. Listen to other people speak. The more you read, the more you listen to, the more you take in, the more adventuresome you'll become. And when you realize that the worst thing that could happen is you fail, that's the worst thing that can happen.
You
So
fail,
what?
fail
You
forward.
failed.
You fail
Failed
forward.
right.
Yes.
By the way, don't forget YouTube. They don't even have to read these things anymore.
That's right.
All of Steve Jobs, there are short ones and there are
Yes.
long ones. What an impressive guy.
Yes.
What a motivational speaker.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just get on YouTube and
So what can we expect in the time we have left? What can we expect in 2015 from F4?
well, I'm going to let him go last and he'll do the wrap up. What I see happening is we have to sharpen our focus. The mission has been evolving. Derek and his friends have been doing some trial and error. What works, what doesn't work, which is an important part of the process. I'm hopeful that by the end of 2015, the mission and strategic plan for F4 will be solid. It'll be solid in that it's real, it deals with a real problem, that the board is involved with it, and that we're able to start showing success. He's already had great success, but the scale that he's now talking about is going to be much larger. And the idea has to be so good, we can demonstrate that it works here, it works there, and then we're going to try to replicate it, not by doing the work, but by educating.
No, I understand.
Derek
Yeah.
loves to remind us about the, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach him how to fish,
Yes.
he eats every day.
Yep.
Right? So,
Yep.
so actually what F4 is going to be doing is really intellectual,
That's
not
great.
necessarily delivering the food everywhere.
That makes eminently good sense. Yeah. You have 30 seconds.
Okay. Ultimately, our goal is to keep the board tight-knit this year. A major initiative is to build out an advisory council of trustees that would work with Dr. Armenti. It would basically be a philanthropist that would help fund and drive the organization forward. We have an ambitious goal. Our metric this year is going to be how many relationships can we establish. So relationship is categorized as linking up a restaurant to a shelter.
Yes.
So we're going to try to go for 30 of those, and we have some ambitious fundraising goals. So hopefully we'll achieve them, and we'll be back here next year.
It's going to be busy. You will. You'll be back here next year with a story of success. Derek, always good to see you. Thank you so much.
Rick, enjoyed meeting you very much.
Good to meet you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Until next time, this is 30 Minutes. I am Rick Anthony. Check out Fiorenza's Food for Friends. I think you'll be impressed with what he's already accomplished and perhaps want to sign on. Take care.